people got no business in my town.
Michael Myers is my business.
Hey, what's going on, guys? War Brothers Collectibles here. Welcome back to another video. In this one, I want to talk about the Halloween franchise, specifically the Halloween timelines. As many people know, this franchise has many different timelines with many different storylines and characters. It's been called the choose your own adventure of horror movie franchises because they start with one story arc, then can't go any further, do a reboot or a restart on another timeline, can't go any further with that, and then start again. So today we're going to look in detail and discuss the Halloween timeline. So let's begin. So let's take a look at the first timeline, but off the bat I just want to say Halloween 3 Season of the Witch is unrelated. If you're new to the franchise or don't know anything about it, Halloween 3 started a anthology series, or tried to. They were going to do a different Halloween themed story each year, and this one was the first one of that because after Halloween 2 they decided to try something different, but it failed. So they decided to bring Michael Myers back in Halloween 4. So this film kind of stands on its own. It's not part of any timeline. So that's just its own separate thing straight off. So the first timeline is the original Halloween, Halloween 2, skip number 3, Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. This starts the story arc of Laurie Strode from 1 and 2. This starts the storyline of Laurie Strode's daughter, so Michael Myers' niece. And then you've got number 4, 5, and 6 that all focus on Jamie Lloyd. And then this is the theatrical cut of number 6. They couldn't go any further because they got themselves into such a mess. They didn't really know. There was different visions of what number 6 should be, and it didn't really turn out very well. It had a very troubled production, and then I think it was released straight to video in the UK. Didn't do very well in the US box office, and didn't review well from fans and critics alike at the time. But there is a lot of fans that like Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, which is number 6. Donald Pleasence sadly passed away shortly after filming this one, so they had that to deal with as well, like how to continue the series. So yeah, so it was Halloween 1, 2, 4, 5, 6 is timeline number 1. The second timeline is what we call the 20 years later timeline with Halloween H2O. So this one is Halloween 1, Halloween 2, ignores 4, 5, and 6 because they wanted to kind of abandon that timeline. That timeline was getting into a curse of Thorn and a supernatural cult, and they just, after Donald Pleasence sadly passed, they just didn't know how to continue the series with that storyline. It was very difficult, especially with the disastrous mess of the theatrical cut. So they decided to kind of like start afresh. So it was Halloween 2, and then Jamie Lee Curtis returned in Halloween H2O 20 years later. This one takes place 20 years, of course, after the first 2 films. Laurie Strode comes back. And then the sequel to H2O was Halloween Resurrection. Now, this one, again, although I like this film, this one, again, was critically, financially a failure. And a lot of fans regard this as the worst one in the franchise. So they decided to kind of abandon this second timeline. They didn't really know how to. There was plans to make another one after this, but they decided not to do that. They decided to, again, start fresh. So let's look at the next timeline. So after Halloween Resurrection, they decided to start again, like start fresh. They didn't start with another storyline. They decided to go down the remake route. So we got Rob Zombie's Halloween, which is a remake of the first film. Now this is the director's cut, the uncut, so to speak, edition of the film. You only ever see the theatrical edition in the UK whenever it shows on Netflix or something like that. Any physical media release, I believe this was the only one that we got, or it's certainly the only one I know of in the UK. It was this version is really brutal and quite nasty in some places. There's really some unpleasant scenes that I have to actually skip through because I just can't watch them. I would watch the theatrical cut. I think this one is too extreme. And then they did a sequel, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, which is a direct continuation. It's not a remake of the original second one by any means. It is its own film. It's a sequel to Rob Zombie's Halloween. It's got nothing to do with the original Halloween 2, even though it has the same title. And then there was plans to do a third one, which I believe was going to be Halloween 3D. Rob Zombie wasn't going to be attached. It was going to be another director, another story, something like that. But then after 2009, the franchise kind of stood still for many, many years until we got to the next timeline. So the final and most recent timeline is what's called the Halloween 40 years later timeline. This was kind of like a requel kind of thing. So you started off with the original Halloween. This time it ignores the original Halloween 2. You went straight to 40 years later after the original, which was the 2018 Halloween. 40 years later, so that kind of like the same thing H2O did, but this was 40 years later. Again, Jamie Lee Curtis returns as Laurie Strode, but it ignores all the other sequels, so this again is a fresh kind of timeline approach. And then there was a sequel, Halloween Kills, and then the trilogy ended, the requel trilogy ended with Halloween Ends, which ends this timeline. There was never any intention to be any other sequels to this timeline because, let's face it, Halloween Ends, the title says it all. It has a very conclusive ending. So this was the end of the last and most recent timeline, what I like to call the requel timeline. The Halloween series is pretty much choose your own adventure timeline. There's loads of different paths to choose. Which one's my favorite? I like all the films in their own way, and I like all the timelines. Even, the Halloween Resurrection one, like, I enjoy that because I'm a huge fan of this franchise. I even enjoy Halloween 3, even though it's certainly its own thing. My favorite timeline has to be the original timeline, which is Halloween 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. I'm really a big fan of the Jamie Lloyd, really a big fan of that. And I just love Donald Pleasance in those films. It's such a shame that he left us after Halloween 6. And I just want to show you guys like kind of a representation of the timeline. So this was the first one. Halloween 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. Then that one ends. Then you've got Halloween 1, 2, H2O, and Resurrection. Halloween 3 stands by itself, of course. Then you've got the next timeline, Rob Zombie's 2 remake films, Halloween and then its sequel, Halloween 2. No more after that. And then you've got the Halloween 40 years later timeline, which is the first film, 2018 Halloween requel, which starts this new trilogy. Halloween Kills, then Halloween Ends. So there we go, guys. They're just a representation of the Halloween franchise timeline. If you've never seen this series before, definitely give it a go. It is a really good series to watch, and there's loads of different options to choose from. Personally, I just watch them all in order of release. But yeah, if you want to have a go and see these different timelines, there's plenty to choose from. So thanks very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.